The topic this evening is Meet Life with Cheerful Expectation. Very good topic and a very good philosophy and attitude to have towards life, towards all of life. And I will read from Swami Kriyanandaji's Living Wisely, Living Well for today's reading, October 11. Even if you are not attached to anything, meet life with cheerful expectation. Whatever comes, greet it with a smile. A cheerful attitude will magnetically attract to you, in every circumstance, the best possible results. And I'll repeat this last sentence because it's so important. It's a very profound truth, and it's a very simple one. I think the deepest truths and most practical ones tend to be simple, and this is one of those. A cheerful attitude will magnetically attract to you, in every circumstance, the best possible results. This means going through life with an attitude of expectation, not just hoping for the best, but just a positive attitude. And yes, we have to act, we have to put out energy, we have to put out the right kind of energy. But if we do that expecting success, expecting luck, expecting positive results, those two things together, our action and energy and willpower and our expectation, creates a very powerful magnetism. There's a story I often share in this regard with meditation. Many years ago, I had the duty, the joy of leading a 3-hour meditation every single week at another village for several years. And one day, it was at the end of the day, it was from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I had had a long day and a busy day. And I was tired, I was restless. I was not looking forward to sitting for 3 hours. I felt like this was going to be torture, to force myself to sit for 3 hours against my will. And so basically I had a very bad attitude about it, justified in my own mind by how my day was, and I really did not want to do this. And so as I was walking from my car down to the little temple where the meditation was about to begin, I heard a voice in my head. And to this day, I don't know where that voice came from. I don't know that it was God speaking to me or the Guru. On some level, of course it was. And maybe it was just the voice of my own superconscious mind. But this voice was not my thoughts. It definitely was not my thought, because it came out of nowhere and was completely different than my state of mind. And this voice said, with a great deal of anticipation, expectation, joy, it said very simply, "This could be the night." That's all it said. And I knew what it meant. I knew it meant that this could be the night that I go into samadhi and final union in God through Kriya Yoga meditation. And so when I heard that voice, my pace picked up. I felt about 30 pounds lighter as I was walking. I had expectation. I went down to that temple, led the 3-hour meditation with a great deal of expectation and anticipation. And to make a long story short, not to keep you in suspense, this wasn't the night that I went into final union into God, but in fact it was a really, really good meditation that I had. Blissful meditation, joyful meditation. It was an entirely positive experience. And it happened entirely because of my expectant, cheerful, positive attitude. It would not have been a good meditation if I had gone in with that negative attitude. And this is such an important lesson, because all that changed was my attitude. My actions were the same. I led that meditation every week for years. Very similar way, some chants, some reading, listening to a talk by Swami Kriyananda a little bit. So everything was the same, all conditions were the same, except I was different. And because of that, I got different results. And so this is really the secret to getting the most from life. And I'll talk more about applying this to meditation. But you can apply this to any aspect of your life, and I'll get into that also. With meditation, everyone has ups and downs in their meditation career, so to speak. And I think most people, nearly everybody, they go through a period after the initial stages of sort of beginner's enthusiasm and beginner's luck of having some initial experiences and good results with meditation. It's very common to go through a long dry period in meditation where meditation is very difficult. It's challenging, it's restless, it's hard, or it seems that way. And this is when I think many people give up and they just think, oh, okay, meditation is not for me. I've gotten all the results I'm going to get. This is too hard. Or they lose their enthusiasm and their daily practice starts getting less and less and less. Maybe they miss a few daily meditations and then the habit completely goes away. But those who have been meditating for decades and many years have found that you do have to get through that stage. Nearly everyone does, even Swami Kriyanandaji. He said very early on in his meditation practice, when he was with Paramahansa Yogananda or soon after that, he said that he went through an entire year where he hated doing Kriya Yoga, this meditation practice that we do, this meditation technique. And it's amazing to hear a great saint, a master, say that even they go through these difficulties. And yet he kept putting out the energy, he kept showing up. I think half the battle is just showing up and being there. That's what my experience that day was with that 3-hour meditation. I found that every week I had to show up because I was responsible for leading it. And one thing I really discovered, it's actually easier to do a long meditation, 3-hour meditation once a week. It's easier to do it once a week than it is once a month. I really encourage people to have a long meditation every week and just have a time that's absolutely fixed. It's your time with God. Friends call you, they want you to do something that time, morning or evening. Oh, I have an appointment at that time. I have an engagement. I have a meeting already set at that time. And you'll find that just putting out the energy, developing that routine, and just showing up, you'll have some good times, you'll have some not so good meditations, but over time, just putting out that kind of energy of persistence creates magnetism also. So persistence is another attitude and attribute that creates the type of magnetism that attracts success in any way. Success in meditation is not achieved by climbing a mountain and just putting out the effort. The way that our masters have taught it is that we can't, through our own effort, lift ourselves up into a state of consciousness that we don't already have or own, that we need to be lifted from above. And this is the power of divine grace. And divine grace is not just some sort of like a lottery ticket that just goes in one person's direction and then another. We have to, as Swami Kriyanandaji wrote, the title of a book he wrote was Cooperating with Grace. And so what he said and what he taught is that if we work with techniques of yoga, techniques of meditation, that by just, for example, lifting our eyes up towards the spiritual eye, having a straight spine, and looking up with our consciousness, it attracts the grace of God to lift us up. The way Swamiji often put it later in his life, I heard him say this many times. He said that he learned from his life's experiences that if you lift one hand up to God for help, for assistance, God will lower 2 hands down to pick you up and lift you up. And that is grace. That is cooperating with grace. And in a way, the techniques of yoga are not some egotistical achievement that if we meditate so many hours a day and become really pure and holy, we will become like God. Really, the techniques of yoga, really all of them, and Swamiji has said this, they are a way of cooperating with grace by putting ourselves in that position to be lifted up, and by offering ourselves to God, by offering ourselves with deep devotional self-offering. And if we lift our heart's energies up, offering them to God, to the Guru, to Divine Mother, that magnetism and energy will lift us up. And you see this, that if a child is giving love to a parent or an adult, that's very magnetic, and it will draw the attention more easily of the parent or of an adult or other people. You'll see this. People who are very loving, cheerful, and giving are very magnetic, and they attract the right kind of people around them. And as I'll talk in a little bit, you even attract the right kind of thoughts and the right kind of consciousness. So the same goes for all of life, not just in meditation. It applies to business life, it applies to working with others. Be cheerful, and you will find that you attract assistance, you attract help, you attract the right kind of people. Whereas if you're dour and sour and negative and always kind of doubting and this and that, you'll tend to push people away, or you will attract like-minded people, people who are negative. There's a story from a book from my childhood that I think just all Americans read when they were growing up. It was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain. And I think many people, perhaps in India, have also read this. And there's a story in there where Tom Sawyer, he was being punished by his aunt, who I think was his guardian. And she punished him, and she made him paint the fence in front of the house. And it was a big fence. It was a solid board fence, 9 feet high, 30 feet long. And he had to paint it white. And the paint was not all that good, so it was going to require several coats of paint. And it was on a Saturday, when all the other kids were having fun and playing. And he was very negative about this. He started the painting, and the brush was heavy, and his arm was heavy, and he was negative, and he just did not want to be there painting that fence. And one of his friends, another boy, walked by, and he tried to encourage this other boy, "Oh, can you please help me paint the fence? This is so hard, it's going to take me so long." And this other boy found every kind of excuse to not help him paint the fence. "Oh, I've got to go run this errand, I've got to do this, my mom's waiting for me," this and that. And so this boy went along. And so Tom Sawyer kept painting the fence. And then he had a brainwave. And it was really just a change of attitude. He had this idea. And so he started painting the fence with a lot of enthusiasm. He painted it like he was an artist painting a masterpiece. He would brush a few strokes, he would stand back and look at it admiringly, paint a few more, and he just started enjoying it. First he started pretending to enjoy it, and this is a very interesting thing. If you just put out the energy even to pretend to enjoy something, it starts to create that right kind of magnetism. And so pretty soon another boy came along, another friend of his, who was just whistling and cheerful and enjoying this day off away from school. And so he walked up to Tom Sawyer, and Tom Sawyer was painting and admiring and enjoying this process of painting the fence. And the other boy asked, "What are you doing, painting this fence?" And Tom Sawyer said, "Yes, this is my lucky day. I get to paint this fence today. I'm just so happy about this." And he went on, and this other boy started getting attracted and thinking positively that, painting fences, this is really a good thing. And I think I would like to help paint this fence. And so he offered Tom Sawyer to help him paint the fence. And Tom Sawyer said, "This is a really important fence. It's on the front of the house, and it has to be done really properly. And I don't think I should let you help me paint the fence." And so he was playing hard to get, as they say. And the boy kept saying, "Oh, but I really want to help you paint the fence." And Tom Sawyer kept saying, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think so." And finally the boy was just so compelled to paint the fence. And Tom Sawyer said, "Well, if you give me that toy you're holding and pay me with that, I'll let you paint the fence." And so pretty soon this boy started painting the fence, and other boys came along, and the same thing. Tom Sawyer started collecting all these coins and toys and different things from all these boys who wanted to paint the fence and wanted to have the blessing and the opportunity to paint the fence. And again, the only thing different was his cheerful attitude about it. And you'll see this. If you see someone working and doing a job, and I've experienced this in my early days at Ananda Village. My first several years I worked in the Ananda Garden. And the head of the garden in those days was a man who's still living there 40 years later, still amazingly cheerful, joyful, positive, still gardening. His name is Nayaswami Ananta, a really, truly saintly soul. And he just had so much energy, joy, enthusiasm working in the garden. It was truly a complete joy to serve with him. There was laughter, there was energy. He put out a lot of energy, and we had to put out a lot of energy in doing this. And you could see that the energy that he was putting out, this very positive energy, attracted the right kinds of people who were of like mind, but it also drew out the positive energy in others. And so this cheerful, positive attitude really can change a lot in your life. And I think everyone, when we face karma in life, problems come, situations come, and we just, as Yoganandaji, he called it the beatings of life. And he put it very graphically, and I think we've all had a lot of beatings in our life. And you start getting beat up, and you start dragging your feet, and kind of expecting another beating and another bunch of karma to come. And that attitude attracts the negative experiences and negative thoughts especially. And so this cheerful attitude attracts positive thoughts. There was a man in the early part of America who was trying to be an athlete, and he wasn't all that good, and he was sort of negative about it. And finally, his coach just told him, "You're always dragging your feet and negative," and was trying to get him to change his attitude. And this coach said, "Try to be more enthusiastic." And the man didn't have any enthusiasm, but he decided that he could pretend to be enthusiastic just to please his coach. And so he started doing that. But then he found that as he pretended to be enthusiastic, and he would run from place to place and be very positive and straight spine and all these things, he found that his energy and his consciousness began to change. Again, because that change of attitude created a change of magnetism. And the whole sort of foundation of this truth is something that Paramahansa Yogananda wrote an autobiography of the yogi. One of the most amazing and important truths that is in that book. And it is also quoted in the Living Wisely, Living Well reading from yesterday, which is October 10th. And so I'm going to read that because these two readings, October 10th and 11th, tie very closely together. And Swami Kriyanandaji writes, "Not a thought that you think originates with you." Isn't that amazing? Not a thought that you think originates with you. Ideas, thoughts, creative ideas. I can hear many people saying, "Wait a minute, that was my thought, I had that idea. That was my idea, it didn't come from anywhere but me." But then he explains, not a thought that you think originates with you. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, "Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted." And I'll read that little sentence again at the end. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. Your most precious inspirations are not your own. You have merely caught a current of thought that was already flowing through the universe. Thoughts, in turn, are only manifestations of divine consciousness. Therefore, Yogananda said also, "I suffer when you have moods," he said to his disciples. "I suffer when you have moods, for I see then that Satan has a hold of you. Think when negativity wells up within you, Satan is trying to catch me. To rid yourself of such possession, chant to God and raise your level of energy in the spine. Soon you will find positive thoughts and feelings fairly pouring into your mind." And so, if you want to change your thoughts, This is, again, working, cooperating with grace, using the practices, techniques of yoga, combined with devotional offering and thoughts of God and prayer. All these things change our magnetism. And the greatest inspirations, the greatest feelings of divine bliss in meditation, the greatest feelings of love, kindness, the greatest creative thoughts and ideas, they are only things that we tune into. It's like tuning a radio. And depending on the consciousness and attitude and the approach that we take with tuning this radio, that will determine which radio station that we get. And if our consciousness is sour, negative, our thoughts are going to be sour and negative. Not the other way around. It's not the thoughts that cause us to have a bad mood. It's the bad mood and negative energy and magnetism that attracts the thoughts. And when we are uncheerful, when we are sour and negative, we will start looking at the darker side of life. We'll start looking at negative possibilities and potentials. And the other way around, when we're cheerful, when the energy is lifted up the spine, as it is when we practice meditation, then our thoughts will change. Our thoughts will be more positive. Our thoughts will really, again, I say our thoughts, isn't it? It's so interesting how we just use that phrase naturally, but Yogananda is saying, these are not our thoughts. We are only tuning in to universal thoughts that are already there. Swamiji points out in this regard that the greatest inventions, creative ideas, inspirations, music, all these things, great geniuses have only tuned into. Einstein only tuned in to that theory of relativity and this sort of cosmic ideas and thoughts that he had. Great composers, the truly great composers, tune in to music that is coming from the divine. Swamiji often said this about his own music. There's a story of a great Western musician who wrote a piece of music that 200 years later is still sung every Christmas. It's called the Handel's Messiah. It's a piece of music. And he said that when he wrote that music, he said he was in a state of superconsciousness. That all he did was he wrote down what he was hearing. He said it was like angels singing, and all he did was he wrote down the notes. And he wrote this whole orchestra piece of music, symphony, just by tuning in and listening. And prior to that, he was already in an uplifted state. And in that uplifted state, he tuned his radio to that level of creativity. And so this is a very good lesson. When we want to try to come up with a creative solution in business, in family life, in just mundane practical issues, meditate. Sit to meditate. If you practice Kriya Yoga, do some Kriya Yoga. Concentrate your awareness and your energy at the point between the eyebrows. What happens is that if we create a strong magnetism here at the spiritual eye, one of the effects is that magnetism lifts and pulls the energy upwards. And when the energy is flowing upwards, then when we sit in the stillness, in meditation, in that uplifted consciousness, naturally creative ideas and potential comes to us. And so again, as Yoganandaji put it, thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. And this is, again, one of the most important truths that there is, because it teaches us that if we want the right kind of thoughts, we don't have to create them. All we have to do is tune into them. And so this is the power, the truth behind all creative actions, behind all creative writing, all creative ideas, even the most mundane ideas. I've shared this story often. When I served and worked for Swami Kriyananda many years ago, I was responsible for following through on a large construction project that had been done at his home at Ananda Village. And there was a fountain that wasn't working properly. And the plumbers and the people who built the fountain They tried everything they could, and they finally gave up. They just could not solve this problem. And so it was left to me. And Swamiji kept asking me, so have you fixed it yet? And I just had no idea what to do. I called experts. And one day I was meditating. I was practicing Kriya Yoga. I wasn't thinking consciously about this problem. It must have been at the back of my mind. I was practicing Kriya Yoga meditation, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, the solution to this problem came to me. Some strange solution to a strange problem that probably had never been seen before. And the solution came in meditation for the most mundane possible problem, a plumbing problem. So whatever you're trying to do in life, whatever you're trying to achieve in life, the answer always is to change our consciousness, to change our magnetism. And this does so many things. It attracts positive thoughts, it attracts creative solutions, I think it attracts devas and angels to us if we do it in a truly uplifted way. In fact, Yoganandaji once, a disciple, was asking him one time, because Yogananda had described once in a satsang that a certain master had appeared to him, sort of just materialized before him as he was meditating one time, sitting on the bluffs, the cliff above the ocean. And this disciple said, can you tell us about that master who appeared in vision to you that time? And Yoganandaji's answer was, which time are you talking about? So many have come to me in that way. And then he added, where God is, there his devotees come. And where God is, there are his visions, his upliftment, his grace, his miracles. God lifts us up. And so the greatest way to change our magnetism is to try to have thoughts, not just thoughts, but feeling of God's presence in our lives. If God is too abstract, you can worship God in form as Divine Mother, or you can tune into the consciousness of the Guru. And when we do that, we start to change our magnetism. And where God's consciousness is, God will come. And again, as Swami Kriyanandaji often said, if you lift one hand up to God, God will lower two hands to lift you up. And so, again, this is really the solution to all the problems in our life, is simply to change our consciousness. When we change our consciousness, many, many good things happen. It doesn't mean that we don't act. We're compelled to act because we have karma from the past, and so we must act. We must put out positive energy. But even that, you will see that if you continually put out positive outward activity and energy, that it starts to also create a change in your own magnetism. Even sometimes if you don't know what you're doing, you'll find that if you're just positive and launch off in the right direction, you think just positively and cheerfully, you will start to attract success. The right people, the right thoughts, the right inspirations. And so I'll read this again. Even if you are not attached to anything, meet life with cheerful expectation. Whatever comes, greet it with a smile. A cheerful attitude will magnetically attract to you, in every circumstance, the best possible results. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.